And Rebecca, can you take roll?
Director Strange?
Here.
Director Davidson?
Here.
Director Thomas?
I'm here.
Director Underhill?
Here.
President Reddick?
Here. Item 2 on our agenda is public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on any non-agendized item. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have any public comment today? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to the consent agenda. We got the following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. We have 3 items. They're monthly timesheets, our claim summary, and approval to file a California EQA notification for water deliveries to an existing land ownership under the Frank B. Smith and Heather Smith Family Trust.
Move for acceptance of the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Rebecca, can you take roll?
Director Strange?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Reddick?
Yes. Okay, item 4, new business. This is our annual high school senior scholarship winners. Congratulations to you too. Joel Metzger is going to present this for us.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm very pleased to announce our 2 scholarship winners for the 2018 CCWD Scholarship Award Program. This program was started several years ago as the board's attempt to help encourage local high school seniors to engage in careers that have to do with water or careers that may come back to help the county at some time down the road. What we do is we create an essay question prompt each year that is relevant to the value of water and the current events involving water. We send that out to Mountain Oak School, Bret Harte High School, and Calaveras High School. And that's put out to students who are interested in applying for the scholarship. And we normally receive anywhere from 20 to 50 essays that come back from those 3 schools combined. And a committee of staff members read those essays. All of the names and identifying marks are taken off, so they're judged purely on their words, not any association or who someone might know. And then top essays are selected through that committee process. And it's very fun to see what students come up with and how they approach writing an essay about the value of water. So I wanted to just share with you what the essay prompt was this year. The prompt was, discuss the value of water in California, and specifically in Calaveras County. After multiple years of drought, an exceptionally wet winter in 2016 and 2017 ended one of the worst droughts in California's recorded history. What should be done at the state level and locally to minimize the negative impacts of the inevitable next drought? So this is what was given to these students, and this is what they responded to. So I'm very proud to announce the 2 winners, and Claudia, if you'd come up along with Sierra. Claudia Loomis is an Angels Camp resident, graduated from Bret Harte High School, and she plans to pursue a degree in political science at CSU Sacramento or UC San Diego. Maybe you have a word on which one you're going to go to. And then our second winner is Sierra Stevens. She's an Arnold resident who graduated from Bret Harte High School and planned to attend Montana State University to study computer science. So Claudia, why don't we start with you, and we're going to have Claudia read her essay, and then if you have any questions for her afterward, please go ahead and do that. Come on up.
Buckle up, this is a bit of a long ride. As a politically minded person, I believe in the concept of civic duty, the obligation of a citizen to their country. California's approximate 77,500 farms produce more than 400 commodities and 2/3 of the nation's fruits and nuts. About 1/4 of what California produces is exported around the world. California remained the nation's leading state in cash farm receipts in 2015 and produced 13% of the U.S. total. Nearly 27% of California's farms generated sales over $100,000, greater than the national average of 20%. California has 25.5 million acres of farm and ranch land, and the average farm size was 329 acres in 2015. But agriculture has had a devastating effect on our water supply, especially during dry spells. As farms are relying more and more on groundwater, pulling 46 to 60% of supplies in dry years, it is important to look at alternative methods of farming. As well as what farmers can do, it is important to look at what the average citizen can contribute and what legislation can be put into place in order to minimize negative impacts of the inevitable next drought. Farmers are the backbone of America, but the farmers supply what the consumers demand. A high demand for almonds has caused a growing usage of water. Almond growing accounts for 10% of California's water. Almonds are the second most requested commodity in California, second only to dairy. California almonds use a stunning 1.1 trillion gallons of water each year, or enough for a 10-minute shower each day for 86 million years using a low-flow shower head. California as a whole pumps 43 million acre-feet of water each year to supplement its rainfall. In total, agriculture consumes 34 million acre-feet of that. An acre-foot is the amount of water needed to cover an acre of flat ground up to a foot, or about 325,000 gallons of water. In 2013, there were 940,000 acres of almonds in California, according to the USDA. Each acre of almond uses 3 to 4 acre-feet of water each year, most of which is delivered via river diversions or groundwater. With almonds alone, it would be worth looking at new irrigation systems for farming. One thing that can conserve groundwater is crop rotation, the practice of growing a series of different crops in the same area in sequence sessions. It is done so that the soil of farms is not used for only one set of nutrients. It helps in reducing soil erosion and increases soil fertility and crop yield. Crop rotation would be beneficial for water use in farming. Every citizen can do their part and to help the water crisis. The first is showering effectively. Reducing your time in the shower is a common tip for reducing water use, but showering more efficiently, and especially thinking about when to leave the water on while showering, is just as important. Try turning off the water while shampooing your hair, and rinsing your razor in the sink instead of in the shower. Letting the tap water run, especially in suburbs so the water can warm up, is common. Letting the water run or even drip slowly while not actively using it is a big water waster. While brushing your teeth or washing dishes, turn off the tap in the time when it's not actively in use. It may seem like an unrelated issue, but power plants use tons of water to produce energy for the grid. So reducing the carbon footprint that we make is essential. By biking more, turning off the lights, and unplugging your devices, it can also save water. Water-intensive foods are a big problem during a drying spell. Eating local foods reduces the amount of water used in transporting and preserving them in travel, and many specific foods require a large amount of water to produce. Meat, especially beef, pork, and lamb, as well as almonds, walnuts, eggs, rice, soybeans, avocados, and wheat are some of the most water-intensive foods. Consumers are powerful in their decision on where to spend their dollar vote at the grocery store. By buying less water-intensive foods, it can demonstrate commitment to more efficient food products that are more compatible with drought conditions. Easy ways to do this include eating less meat and eating vegetables like lettuce, tomatoes, and broccoli instead of avocados, green beans, and corn. Moringa is also a great example of a food that requires very little water to produce. Moringa trees are actually great at growing in dry conditions. Last but not least, everyone drinks water on a daily basis. Plastic single-use water bottles that are brought into stores do a lot of harm to the environment. This is true both in terms of resources to manufacture them and waste they create in natural ecosystems, which harms wildlife. It takes 3 times as much water to make a plastic bottle as it does to fill it, and reusable water bottles last a lifetime and don't produce harmful waste upon disposal. There are also many regulations on the quality and safety of tap water than bottled water. Therefore, it is also healthier to refill from the tap. These are just some of the many examples that the average consumer can do to help the water crisis. With the snowpack in California's Sierra Nevada now at 20% average, lower than at the same time 3 years ago, the driest year on record, Californians are destined for a repeat of drought conditions. Water scarcity seems likely to be a recurring part of our future. Legislators in Sacramento would like to advance the adoption of a group of bills that would place the state on a path to more sustainable water supplies. Voters will have the opportunity to consider a new water funding mechanism this year. Proposition 68, the California Clean Water and Safe Parks Act, will help ensure our water infrastructure is up to the task of delivering clean water. The proposition would allow the state to issue $4 billion in bonds to spend to help prepare for the next drought and increase local water supplies. It is important to see that legislative measures are being taken to ensure the stability during a water crisis.
Well, thank you very much, Claudia. Obviously, you did a lot of research, put a lot of time into that. That's very, very impressive. I'm sure you're going to do well at Sac State. You going to be a Hornet, or are you going to UC?
Actually, neither. I had, yeah, surprise. I had applied to University of Nevada, Reno, and that's where I was going to go to college. I was going to go in the spring of 2019, but unfortunately, my Nevada-bound scholarship didn't work out just due to various factors, and I can't afford $31,000 a year to go to an out-of-state school, so I'm starting at Columbia and then transferring to a CSU.
Well, congratulations. I'm sure you'll do well.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else have any comments for Claudia?
No, very nice.
Well, I do have a comment. I'm extremely proud of you. I just, you know, when you live here in Calaveras County, you meet a lot of people, and I met your mom years ago, and so when I saw the name Loomis, I was just absolutely thrilled. And thank you so very much for your submittal, and I'm glad that we were able to help you.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure that you read that her ambition is to become president of the United States. So should we all stand up and salute?
That's okay. Maybe in the future.
Great reference to the drumstick tree.
All right, go ahead. Thank you so much.
Water has an importance that goes beyond that of drinking and irrigation in Calaveras County. Although we are mainly a rural livestock and irrigation county, the limited amount of water our community has access to affects everyone instead of just the cows and vineyards. Water is used to control human waste and sewers. Without this control, our land would become polluted and, in some places, useless. In order to preserve our natural land and keep its glory preserved, water is used to wash away our waste. Furthermore, water is used to provide locals with electricity with hydroelectric dams. By using this more environmentally friendly method for obtaining electricity, we yet again preserve the beautiful community we live in. Still, we cannot ignore the importance of water has in our economy, where California is the United States' #1 agricultural state. Without water, California's economy and the well-being of its citizens in the United States will both plummet to dangerously low values. In Calaveras County, a severe drought would hurt grass-fed cattle ranches as well as the numerous winery businesses that bring countless tourists to Murphy's. Since water is such a valuable resource, it is important that we treat it as such by preserving it. Last year's winter during 2016-2017 ended one of the worst droughts that the state of California has ever seen. With weather patterns becoming more exaggerated and unexpected, it is important for Californians to be prepared for the next drought in the act of preventing a drought from occurring altogether. Most of the water wasted happens in an individual citizen's home. As a state, California could promote the preservation of water by offering financial benefits for the use of water-preserving utilities such as composting toilets, low-flow shower heads, and water-conserving washing machines and dishwashers. Families living in Calaveras County should also be promoted to use only native plants in their landscaping and limit their growing of foreign plants which require more water. Native plants are naturally able to manage and adapt to local weather patterns and therefore require less excess water. By collecting rainwater, a process made legal by Governor Jerry Brown in 2012, local families can practice a method of accessing an overlooked source of water, reducing the amount of runoff water being wasted and instead having it put to use for landscaping in yards or giving your dog a bath. Also, farmers that use automatic irrigation systems should be prompted to use drip irrigation systems instead of sprinklers. The drip irrigation puts all water to use by delivering the water straight to the soil, whereas sprinklers that blast water under high pressure lose a large percentage of water to mist and evaporation. Further, the farmers should irrigate their crops during the night hours when evaporation of water is greatly reduced. There is no way to reverse the drought once it has presented itself, but what Californians can do is prevent them from ever coming in the first place.
Well, thank you very much. And where are you going to attend in school?
Montana State University.
Oh, that's right.
Bozeman.
And what are you going to be studying?
Computer science.
Very nice. Congratulations on your win here. I think we're going to have a picture, take a picture with
Yeah, if you could present
the winners.
checks, and
Okay.
we'll have a group picture with
I just have one comment. And I don't mean to be picky necessarily, but I read, Sierra, in your other essay about you and your siblings moving out of Calaveras County to go in a big scary world and make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And my only comment would be, you could make a big difference in the world and live in Calaveras County. Thank you.
I just have, again, an Arnold product that I'm, very proud to know. We go to the same church.
Cool.
Did she buy a ticket for the Corvette?
Every year.
But here's the winning.
That had no bearing on the decision made.
Any other comments? Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right, so quick one here, and then let's all come up to the front of the board. Dave, why don't you get next to the board?
Thank you so much.
Great job.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, here we go.
If you got married ones, then make sure you're still gonna bring flowers.
Okay, let me do one flash. Okay, one more, 1, 2, 3. Okay, bear with me here. And one more, 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Fabulous. Yeah, congratulations. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Val. You bet. Okay, so we're gonna head outside.
Still pretty interested in water.
Don't have any context.
Hey.
Telling some lies.
I just forgot the lollipop.
Take your fly rod to Montana with you. For sure.
Okay, moving on with our agenda, item 4B, discussion direction regarding sewer fund repayment agreement between the sewer fund, Fund 500, and the water fund, Fund 300. Jeffrey Myers, there he is.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. The item before you is not new. We discussed this during the rate hearing, as well as the budget and the dollars for, as far as the debt service for the fiscal 18-19 loan payment is included in this budget. So basically what I'm doing is memorializing an agreement for the sewer fund to repay the water fund for losses that it had incurred back in 15, 16, and 16, 17. The $716,110 that we've discussed on a number of occasions. Your board directed us to look at a 10-year repayment process that's been built into the financial model, and all I'm asking you to do is to approve this resolution memorializing the loan, and we will have this move along. Any questions?
The only question I have is on the 2%. How was that arrived at with an interest rate of 2%? And looks like a total interest cost over the 10 years be $81,000?
Correct.
Okay.
That was the discussion early in January when rates were still kind of low, and that's what was built into the model, and that's what your board, we proposed to your board, and your board gave us that direction.
Okay.
Move for acceptance.
Second?
There you go.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion here? Any public comment? Rebecca, will you take roll?
Director Strange?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes?
Director Benjamin?
Yes.
President Rodrick?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And I noticed I failed to ask for public comment on item 4A, the scholarship winners. Is there any public comment on that? Okay. All right, moving on. 4C, discussion action regarding the authorization of the general manager to enter into contracts for sale of contracted water supplies from New Hogan Reservoir.
Did you ask for public comment on the last
I did.
item? Did you? Okay. Cool.
Peter Martin.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. President, board members. So today, we are bringing an item before you. It's been several decades since we've had any interest in a contract for water from the Calaveras River. So over the past few months, I've been working with the Water Law Council to develop sort of a revised draft contract for supplies to diverters and on the New Hogan system. And at this point, we're kind of moving past where we were when these original contracts were written up. They were obviously on an interim basis with a few exceptions. And so we've kind of taken a look at it to look at things like new regulations for measurement of water supplies, water diversions for water rights purposes, and also looking to have some considerations for eventual implementation of the Habitat Conservation Plan on the Calaveras River. And so the draft contract that you have in your packet is one that we're kind of proposing for this next step. And in order to sort of not have to bring these back multiple times in the future, we're asking today that you authorize the general manager to enter into these contracts with obviously some considerations for any additional things as far as like environmental work or anything like that. So.
And the general thought there, reasoning behind this request is that obviously we do have available water supplies out of New Hogan to serve this and other future customers. And that will be one of the analysis that we do at a staff level, is to make sure there's continuing availability to serve new customers. But the actual addition of the customer with the template for the contract being updated to be able to do that, and then to confirm that we have addressed any other issues, including any environmental review issues with those, can be handled at an administrative level by staff in the future, and this could be more expedited. And we hope that we will have others that will also request service.
One quick question that I have is the reference to United States Bureau of Reclamation. And it was my understanding that Hogan was under the Army Corps of Engineer. How are those two related?
Yeah, so the Bureau is a right holder for the New Hogan water supplies. However, the Army Corps of Engineers does operate the reservoir as a flood control reservoir as well. The Bureau is a right holder just for the contracted supplies between Calaveras County Water District and Stockton East Water District. So yeah, while the Army Corps is the operator, the Bureau is the right holder for the storage. So,
Okay.
Contract.
All right, thanks.
I have a question. This is one particular party, and you said most of these landowners have interim contracts. So that means that when they come to you or come to us, you will be handling their contracts on an individual basis, right?
Are we going to actually update the contracts for the existing customers, or do those remain in effect, and this would only apply, this form of the contract would only apply to new applicants for service?
At this point, the interim contracts are sufficient, I believe, to continue to serve them. If there are things that come up over time, like we've talked about, is that we're kind of pursuing this habitat conservation plan on the Calaveras River. There may be a need to revisit those contracts at that point, especially if there's any requirements on them for screening diversions, any other things like that over time, as those things are kind of fleshed out with the development of the habitat conservation plan. But for the purposes of just the ins and outs of the obligations between the district and the contractor, those prior contracts are sufficient.
Because didn't we have, I thought, I heard 7 at one point? 7?
Yeah, we have, any given year that it does fluctuate. There have been sort of folks that are take water certain years and others that don't.
Oh,
There was the
okay.
quarry there at one time that has since ceased operations, for instance. Technically, they still have a contract with us to deliver water, and some other things as well. So, but right now, it's been 9, pretty routinely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was in that neighborhood.
Well, yeah, my question is really, and you touched base on that, how the Habitat Conservation Plan, which is soon to be finished, according to Aaron anyway, from their end of things.
We're trying, yeah.
Yeah, how that might interplay with not only this, but other contracts too. And I'm a little uncomfortable with, on the water measurement, that we may from time to time measure or cause to be measured the diversion. I mean, having just finished for a client, a state water resources, the annual water rights report, that's pretty much gonna be required. And in fact, it is required by the right holder to measure direct stream diversions. In fact, they even want, now you have to report on how you measure it and all the other things associated with that. So, I mean, really, I think the idea of measurement is one of those shall be completed rather than may from time to time. So that's on item number 9, I guess, a measurement of water. And then, again, as we're moving into more water conservation requirements, I think a water measurement is going to be an annual requirement, a monthly requirement, if not a daily requirement for some of these direct stream diversions.
Is it clear that that would be an obligation of the district or of the actual customer of the district?
Yeah, I think at one time we had something in here that said that they're supposed to put in a meter. But, over time.
We don't want to mandate us into a requirement that's going to cost more money than what we actually get off of this water sale.
Well, there's that too.
And then unless the state requires that, and if we going to put language in here that if we are required by the state, that we're able to pass that through.
One
Yeah,
thing-
this definitely gives us the ability to do that. I mean, I can understand,
Right.
Director Strange, where you're coming from, but I think that this certainly works for this agreement. If this is going to be our template going forward, we can go back. I would say let's use it for this one, and if we want to go back and talk to our water law council about the next one, whether that, as things are progressing at the state, does it make sense to change that to more, yeah.
Well, one thing
Shall.
to just to know with regards to SB 88, when we met with the contractors this last, I guess it was in the wintertime, where we had a meeting for the first time ever since I've been here with all the ag diverters. Those folks have riparian entitlements, and the assumption was that they would be reporting on those
Right.
riparian entitlements. Therefore, they should be meeting their requirements under SB 88. And then we would record those numbers, and any supplemental water would be reported under the Bureau's right for storage out of Hogan. So that also allowed for the CCWD not to be obligated to put in any measurement devices as required under SB 88, because technically we're not the right holder. It's a contract through the Bureau, and we want to be comfortable with deferring to them in this case. They have not told us how they plan to comply with SB 88 at this point, and they have asked for an extension of time to comply. And so I don't know where that is with the state board, but it is their water right, and so CCWD, in my opinion, should defer to the Bureau as to how they're going to meet the compliance requirements for SB 88. And I would worry about putting anything here that would potentially obligate us to do that as well.
Okay, well, I agree with Director Davidson that, I just don't want it to come back to bite us, in the behind, so to speak.
Yeah,
But like you say, if we're not the water right holder, and ultimately it's a water right holder that does the reporting and has that responsibility, then we're okay.
Sure.
But
Yeah, and so it is important, though, that we do have this perpetual easement that says that we can go in and say that they're doing the right thing. If you'd like something stronger, I think we can try to work that out. There was quite a bit of back and forth between our legal counsel and theirs as well to get to this point.
okay.
Yeah, I would suggest again that we look at that for maybe the next round iteration of this contract, but go with what we have here today since it's, yeah.
And the length of this contract is how long? Or that's just on a
Yeah.
contract by contract basis?
So, I mean, the idea is that, as long as the reservoir is there, that they have a right to supplies there as well, as long as we allow them to. There are some terminating clauses in this that were never really there before, but, basically, there's an opportunity in this contract for either party to terminate it as they see fit. And so, that was something that we didn't have in the last, contracts, so it is an important note to make, but obviously there has to be some good cause and, conferring, but, say things change, operations at New Hogan are completely turned upside down or something like that, then yeah, there's some
Well, it
cost.
says that the agreement may be terminated by either party for any reason.
Right, so.
Pretty,
Did this group express any heartburn about the doubling of the rates on the ag water?
At first, but then I think they asked around about what other people are paying for
Yeah.
water, and then all of a sudden that kind of went away, so, yeah,
it is a deal.
I would expect so.
yeah.
Okay, this is an action item. Any discussion or comments?
I'll move for acceptance.
I'll second that.
Do we need two different? No, I'm sorry. This is, I moved ahead.
There was an item on the consent calendar regarding the CEQA exemption that was already passed, yeah, that this is an exempt project.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further comments, discussion up here? Any public comment? Rebecca, will you take roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, item passes. Okay, 4D, discussion, action regarding state legislature. Joel Metzger.
Mr. President, while he's uploading that, on the last item, we will be back to you in the very near future on the Habitat Conservation Plan, requesting the approval of that agreement that we're working on, have been working on for a long time, for the Calaveras River, for Endangered Species Act compliance, and that's with Stockton East Water District as a partner on that. We're also working on an implementation agreement that we're negotiating with Stockton East as well on how we carry forward the implementation and responsibilities under the plan itself. So all of that will be coming back in the near future, and Peter's spent a lot of time on that, and I expect that we'll be completing it again very soon, hopefully this year.
Can we have a workshop on that, Dave?
Yeah, no, that would be great.
educate
It's
us
a
all on
great
that.
accomplishment. I think
so.
it's the only one that will be implemented within a river system within the state, I believe, so. Aquatic HCP within a,
There's a couple more in the
Are there?
north. Yeah, some of the timber companies have.
Oh,
have
okay.
done, yeah.
Okay, take it away, Joel, thanks.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm bringing before you today two legislative items that we discussed at the Legal Affairs Committee, and they recommended that we move forward with the positions that I'm going to put forth. I want to give you a brief overview of these two bills, and so you have an understanding of what we're looking at. The first is SB 998. This is by Dodd, and this is regarding water service shutoffs. And to give you an overview of what Mr. Dodd is proposing, the intent is to standardize water shutoff and restoration procedures throughout the entire state of California and make a one-size-fits-all policy. The reason that Senator Dodd wants to do this is he and his staff believe that there are some agencies that are not treating low-income customers very well, and that the price of water is going up, and his intent is to address what he sees as inequities in shutoff and restore procedures, and to make it easier for folks to keep their water on and then also prevent a shut-off, and if they do get shut off, limit the fees that they would have to pay. And from a staff perspective, we also believe that we need to be fair with customers who are having trouble paying their bills. And that's why this board has developed a set of policies that does address shut-off procedures and outlines exactly what the notification processes are and what the remedies are. And we believe that these are very fair procedures. And so when we look at the content of Mr. Dodd's bill, which would standardize everything statewide, a couple things stand out that are concerning. I just want to share the biggest concerns that we have. We currently do not offer an alternative payment schedule for folks who can't pay their bills. This would mandate that we do offer an alternative payment schedule. So instead of having it due on a due date, we might say you can pay this over the next 2 months, 6 months, year, spread those bills out if people requested that.
But we do allow it to occur before they go.
Yes. So we will take payment anytime. It can be after a
Partial
week,
payment.
after a month, partial payment, whatever people want to do, they can do that. We don't accept any kind of partial payment after the due date. They need to pay that in full, otherwise they do face a water shutoff. Another thing that this bill would mandate would be a formal process to appeal or contest a bill. And so we would need to create potentially your board or maybe the general manager and others to be an appeals board, and a customer could come and say, I don't think I should have to pay this bill and this is why. And under this bill, as long as an appeal is pending and has not been resolved, we would not have the ability to turn off someone's water, which would severely tie staff's hands in terms of holding people accountable for the bills. Also, we would not be able to shut off a customer until they've been delinquent for 60 days. So currently you have about 3 weeks to pay your bill, and then you get a 10-day reminder, and then you get a 48-hour reminder. And if you haven't paid within that time, then you get shut off. This would give people 2 months after the due date has passed until we could actually shut them down, which would significantly expand our process. Additionally, if a customer can demonstrate that they are not able to pay the bill by presenting a CalWorks receipt, CalFresh, many other social programs, if they can show that they're on those programs, we would not, by the law, be able to shut them off if they were recipients of these programs. They could also show that they have an income that is less than 200% of the federal poverty level, and we would be prevented from turning them off. And another concern that we have, which is not listed here, is the bill initially said that before we shut anyone off, we would have to have a public health official from the public health department go to the home, do an analysis, and tell us if they believed that it was appropriate to shut the water off or if that would cause problems for the household. And if they said, no, we don't believe you can shut this person off, then we wouldn't be able to turn them off. Now, we have had some amendments involving that. So now it's not the public health official, it's a physician who would have a medical opinion on whether or not.
So we would have to hire a physician?
No, so if they presented a physician's note saying, I as a physician, as the person who represents this person, think this would be a health hazard, then, and they presented that, then we would be prevented from turning them off.
Oh, but that's, the
That's
homeowner has to go. The
Right.
homeowner can't pay their bill.
Initially,
has to go get a doctor's note.
right, initially it was the other way. It was the public health official had to give us the okay before we could lock anyone off.
So it seems, if I'm thinking this through right, if you're on CalWorks, CalFresh, or any other social assistance program, or your income is less than 200% of the federal poverty level, or you're a physician and can write yourself a note, you probably don't ever have to pay a water bill again.
What happens is we can't lock them off for 90 days, 3-month period, and then it's revisited, and if the same situation is still in existence, then it would go another 90 days, and there is not an end date to that. So yes.
So all our recourse would be is to lien the property each and every time?
Right. So we believe in being fair and equitable, and I will say that Dave has taken a look at situations on a case-by-case basis, including medical situations, and he has used his discretion to give people a little bit more time if necessary. If there's truly a health hazard and they have provided us proof with that, we certainly will not go and lock them off if it's going to be a health hazard. And so what we believe is that this is best at the local level. Our board knows our customers best. We are fair. And if we need to make a policy adjustment, then we can. But to come top down from the state and say, this is what you're going to do, that's really not appropriate, and it isn't a huge problem. Local boards are handling things well, and they're being fair to folks. The word in the halls of the Capitol is that this is an attempt to get something as opposed to the water tax. If that's not going to go through to help people, well, this would be another way to help people who have low incomes make their water bill a little bit more affordable.
How do they get past the subsidy part?
That's a big issue. Another thing I didn't put up here is we would be limited in the reconnection fee and lock-off fee that we charge. And so even if it costs us $100 to lock someone off, we could only charge $50 during normal hours. And that creates a Proposition 218 issue, because if we have to spend $100 and we can only charge $50, we're shifting that cost onto other customers.
Yeah.
And we've made this very clear to the author and his staff. And while they have made some minor amendments to this, they have not made the amendments that alleviate our Prop 218 concerns, as well as the concerns that are still up here on the screen. So Aqua has worked very hard. We worked very hard to provide the amendments, and they have really not taken very many of them. And so it's gone from oppose unless amended to a straight oppose at this point, because there seems to be no working with the author on this any longer.
I personally would like to know how many agencies this Dodd went to visit, because you show us the stats here that less than 4% of existing customers have their service discontinued. So,
This is from Aqua.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah, so they did a member survey, and I
Right.
don't have offhand how many folks they surveyed, but we do have about 400 agencies that are members of Aqua.
Well, you know, as I say, I wonder how many counties or agencies Dodd went to visit.
I do too. So while there are some positive things in this bill, there's too many things that cause grave concern for us, and so we're recommending that this board say no and oppose this piece of legislation because of the lack of amendments that were put into it at this point.
Do you want to do them one at a time?
Yes, I think so.
I make a motion that we make a minute entry to oppose position on SB 998.
I'll second.
Will this mean we're also going to be presenting a letter, or sending a letter to this effect to the powers that be?
Yes, this will be, if the board takes action to oppose, I will follow up with a letter this week.
Okay.
And also feel free to send your own personal letter to President Trump if you so desire.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis Reynolds.
I don't know if he'll have much of an effect on
I
Mr.
personally
Dodd.
feel, representing a lot of disadvantaged communities, that there are some benefits in that bill. And I personally can only support an oppose if amended status on that, not a straight opposition. So that's just me personally with my constituents.
What are the amendments?
There are a number of them. But anyway, to me, I think I'll be a 4-1 on this. So,
Okay, any further discussion here? Comments? Any public comment on the Dodd bill? Okay, Rebecca, will you take roll?
Director Strange?
no.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes.
Director Anderson?
Yes.
President Adams?
Yes. Okay, so we've taken action on SB 998. Now we have AB 2649.
Yes, and I apologize for the small text size on this, but I will talk you through it. So this is by Arambula. He's a Democrat out of the Fresno area. His district covers a lot of the South Central Valley. And this is the latest attempt in a long string of legislative attempts to allow groundwater to be recharged using surface water and to loosen the requirements on gaining a beneficial use status on that groundwater. Currently, when you take surface water and put it into a groundwater basin, you have 5 years to pull that water back out and put it to something that is categorized as beneficial use. So for example, put it in and store it and then take it out and provide agriculture or a public water supply for a town or a city. If that water goes in and stays there for more than 5 years, you basically use your ability to pull it out, and you also don't get credit for beneficial use. And so this push really is coming on the heels of SGMA. We now have a legal mandate to be part of recharging critically overdrafted groundwater basins. In our case, it's the Eastern San Joaquin groundwater basin. And so we have groundwater sustainability agencies and plans that cover larger basins. And each of those agencies and plan as general must bring the groundwater basin into a sustainable rate by 2040. And so as part of that, when staff analyzed this bill, we see a lot of benefits to use the water resources that we have on the surface, Calaveras River, Stanislaus River water. And this may allow us to have more opportunities to do our part as part of the GSA and the GSP to recharge this basin. And anything that we can do to allow us to get our water into the ground and help bring this basin back to a sustainable level is a good thing, in our opinion. And so it's nice to see legislators pushing toward this goal, because it's been very limited when you can get a beneficial use status for water that goes into the ground unless you pull it back out. So just some examples of the current language, and this is stuff that really is very new. If you could recharge a basin to prevent seawater intrusion, that could be considered a beneficial use of water. If you could help prevent the degradation of water quality, that could be a beneficial use. If you could help prevent land subsidence, if you could enhance a groundwater-dependent ecosystem, and it wouldn't necessarily require the extraction of that water. If you could prove that that was going in and doing one of these things, then it actually could be beneficial use without taking it back out. So this is very new. Now, I do need to provide an update to the board on what's happening at the state level with this bill. The reason why previous pieces of legislation that have tried to have something like this go through have failed is because there's a lot of concern, especially from agencies in Southern California, that if more water was allowed to be put into the ground, then less water would stay on the surface and go into the state water project and get south. And that's very important for them, that as much water can come south as possible. And so there are concerns that the north agencies may be hoarding water in their aquifers. And so what has happened is there was a great deal of debate and disagreement at the Aqua State Ledge Committee between agencies in the south and agencies in the north. Many folks in this region want to store more water, and many folks in the south want to store water responsibly but not limit their ability to access that water. And so what happened was this bill got carved up significantly. I have 12 pages of language, and I don't know if you can see how much red there is on here, but there's a lot of red. And this was the result of the Metropolitan Water Agency and others sitting down with Aqua staff and Northern California agencies and trying to come up with language that would be suitable for all parties to agree on. And they did reach a set of amendments that were acceptable to everyone. And that is why this is not just a straight support. This is a support if amended, because for this to go through and be successful, we need to find language that can be supported by the broader coalition. Otherwise, it will probably fail again, as it has in past years. And
Joel, I've got a question. On page 3 of 4, the last paragraph, it does say the staff recommends CCWD take a support position on this bill. And now you're talking about, as in the first page, the motion, it says support if amended. So I'm a little bit confused on.
So again, our concerns, we don't have concerns about this bill, but for the greater coalition, and if I had support without support if amended, that's my error. In order to be part of the coalition that will help push this through, I'm recommending a support if amended, because without the amendments that I have in my hand here, this is probably going to be dead on arrival.
That was my question, was how is Aqua taking a position? So have they taken an official position on this, or is
Yes, so the Legal Affairs Committee did support these amendments, and so they're willing to support it, but the amendments must be
Okay.
included.
Okay, any,
I'll make a motion that we take a support if amended position on AB 2649.
Second.
okay, any further comments, questions for Joel? Any public comment? Okay, Rebecca, oh, go
I have
ahead.
just one question. Russ, have you touched on any of this in your groundwater?
Not this specifically. There was some robust discussion at the end of the meeting today about other issues that I'll talk about in director comments.
Oh, okay.
Certainly the sections of our county over by Burson and all where groundwater is so bad, this is, just to have those bullet items as recognized by the state as beneficial uses is huge.
No, this would be awesome for CCWD if we could get, if this does go through. And if the amendments are what it takes to make it, to make it possibly happen, then that is important.
There's also a parallel track that the State Water Board is on and that the Division of Water Rights staff are supportive of, and that's to try to do something similar to this, but using the existing authorities that they have under law to do an expedited application where under existing rights you could go in and make an expedited application when flows are high in the stream, that you could divert water out of that for these very same purposes. And it was a really interesting discussion we had at the Aqua Board with the responsible staff at the State Water Board, and his position was that a lot of these things that we're trying to include in this legislation, his perspective was that the State Board already recognizes those as beneficial use. There's still, it's not entirely clear that's the case, and some of the attorneys that were on the panel had a different feeling about it, but we're headed in the right direction, and everybody recognizes the challenges with the groundwater situation and SIGMA to achieve our goals under SIGMA, that we have to find ways to be able to, particularly in high flow events, be able to extract that water and use it for recharge. So this is on a very good trajectory right now.
Excuse me, have we had any other, has this type of bill been proposed before and been voted down, or?
Yes, that's what Joel was referring to, that there's been an ongoing effort over the number of years to try to have water code, I think section 1242 expanded to include groundwater recharge as a beneficial use. But that's caused the export agencies who receive project water to again, that concern that those upstream may be trying to hoard water within their basins if they can simply bank it and then it's counted as beneficial use. So it hasn't gone anywhere, and that's why there's been an enormously difficult process with a number of very animated conversations with attorneys in the room with all the different stakeholders through Aqua to get to a point where these amendments could be agreed to. And this represents it's not everything we want, but it is a significant achievement and took a ton of work to get there. So this is an important thing for us to weigh in on.
Can you hit bullet points on those amendments, and what is the main amendments that satisfy the Southern California utilities?
So I'm not going to be able to summarize the 12 pages quickly, but I'm just going to hit on some of the ones that really stood out to me. One is that water would only be able to be diverted from the surface water streams during the 10% of time when the storms are the largest. So 90% of the time you would not be able to take any water and get the temporary permit from the state board and put it into the ground. But if you had that giant storm event that happened to be only 10% of the time, then you could take some of that water that would normally just flow right on out to the bay and really certainly flush the system, but not really do anybody any good. And so there would be very small, narrow windows when you could take this water and you could recharge the basin. So that's one of the main amendments. Also, some of the language that I have up on the screen is expected to be changed to some extent. So this will probably be narrowed in order for the Southern California agencies to agree to it. They really like to refer back to 1242 and more of the language there and some of the more narrower definitions of what constitutes beneficial use. So what I saw was a a lot of language that would be very helpful and beneficial and maybe make it much easier to get these special permits and recharge these basins, carved down to a much more narrow definition of what beneficial use is and when you can take the water. And there's a lot of protective amendments against for downstream users, so you can't injure them in any way. And that's spelled out much more clearly in these amendments. So it's a series of protectionist amendments from Southern California.
Sounds like it's basically added flood control activities. Reduce the threat of flood downstream by taking as much as you can up above.
At very few times.
Yeah, very seldom.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Rebecca, will you take roll?
Director Strange?
Yes.
Director Davis?
Yes.
Director Thomas?
Yes.
Director Underhill?
Yes.
President Preston?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Joe.
Did you want to hit on in your presentation for that, you mentioned a couple other bills that you wanted to touch on. Do you still want to do that, or skip that part?
If the board would like a brief update, I can speak to those items. It's up to the board.
Speaking for the board, sure, let's get a quick
Okay.
update.
So just want to let you know very briefly that SB 623, the water tax, is something that we've been very involved with. The update on that is the legislature just came back from their summer recess, and there's 1 month left until August 31st to get some kind of bill moving forward, which would be SB 623 or another vehicle to have this water tax move forward. I did speak to Cindy Tuck, who's working on this for Aqua, a couple days ago, and she said that at this point, Aqua feels strongly that there are not the votes in the assembly to let this move through. And so they feel as though the coalition, the work that we've done and other agencies throughout the state has been successful. However, she also said that the proponents of SB 623 are tricky, and they may look for another way to push this through. And so she basically said we need to remain vigilant and be ready to react quickly if something is put through at the last minute. But as for now, it seems as though our efforts are going to be successful, and I hope that it stays that way.
So does that mean we should still write letters and?
We have put letters forth on 2 occasions on this, and nothing significant has changed since our last letter, so I think that we're okay at this point on letters.
Okay, then we don't.
What I may do is make a call to the staff of our senator and assembly member and just make sure that they know that our position is still the same.
And at camera, we're sending out a letter on this this week,
Right.
tomorrow.
Right.
You know, by saying we're okay for now, and that it's true, but now is incredibly a brief moment in time, because with the next session, we know they're going to come back with this again. So the coalition that we have was the reason why it hasn't moved forward. We were successful in defeating it in the budget trailer bill process, and hopefully here in the end of the session as well. But it's going to come back, and we've got to maintain that unified front. So bringing in camera and watching it extremely closely in case something were to move and break, so that we would be able to weigh in on it, it'll continue to be one of our highest priorities.
Yes. On the long-term water conservation, I did want to let the board know that we had a good meeting with the county in a 2x2, and let them know that there's most likely going to be a county-wide drought planning component. So if we do have a severe drought, the county has a plan in place that not only addresses urban water agencies, but also well owners and everyone in the county who needs to have a reliable water source. And so CAO Tim Lutz, Brian Moss will be involved with that. The supervisors are aware of that now. And what we're going to do is continue monitoring the Department of Water Resources' progress on implementing this legislation. And when we have more guidance from them on what plan is going to be required, then we hope to team up with the county and work in collaboration on a countywide drought plan, if that is what is required. We're also monitoring the development of the outdoor landscape targets. And as DWR refines their method for measuring outdoor landscape and determining budgets, we are making comments on that, and I will bring back more once they've released more, but they're still doing pilot studies at this point. And that's going to be absolutely key for us, is how much water we have outdoors in our budget. And so it may be a very dire situation, or it may be fine. It just depends on what they come back with. Also on the McCollum Wild and Scenic legislation, I just wanted the board to know that we have gotten a lot of statewide recognition for that effort. I've seen at least 20 to 30 news articles that have been published throughout the state. We were in the Aqua newsletter. There was a nice write-up. President Ratterman was quoted in that. And there's very positive coverage coming out of that decision. A lot of people saying it's unique to see environmental groups work with water agencies and agree on a consensus that everyone's okay with that protects water rights and protects the environment. And so I just want the board to know that this has been widely covered, and I believe that CCWD is being portrayed in a very positive light because of that decision. So congratulations to the board for that accomplishment. And that's all I have on the other legislative updates.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, on, that's, new business is done, nothing to report on old business, general manager report. Mr. Egerton.
Yes, just to give you a quick update on a couple of things that we're working on now, two of which we updated the engineering committee meeting yesterday. We had agenda items on those, and they will come back in more detail to the board, but we're continuing to work with Snowshoe HOA on trying to find some kind of arrangement that would work so that we could partner on the improvements that they're seeking to make to their system. They would fund those. They would seek probably a USDA loan and fund those. That would be basically full replacement of everything on their side of the meter, their distribution system. They would also obtain additional capacity from us for fire flow so that they could add hydrants to their neighborhood. So, you know, you've got 230 approximately homes currently being served, and they don't have fire protection with the hydrants, and their system is very leaky. So this would be a really good project, and the timing of us going after the OES funds for the Redwood tank replacement, if we're successful in that, could use those funds at the same time. We're also partnering with the HOA and this project. It could be a really good win-win for both of us. Also, we updated the board on our discussions with Jenny Lind Elementary School on their desire to try to connect to our wastewater system, and that's something that we got a briefing from Matt Hospital and Hugh Logan. Hugh is the general manager of San Andreas Sanitary District and also serves as a contract operator for the school for that wastewater facility. Hugh is a tremendous guy. I really have enjoyed working with him, and he's a real creative problem solver. But really, they've been incredibly successful in pursuing SRF, State Revolving Fund, monies for this project. They expect that they're going to get up to $8 million of 100% funding for this. It's kind of funny, the children count as, because of the inability of kids to pay back loans, they count as a severely disadvantaged community. And it's amazing. Somehow the calculation is 0.33 person for each student. So Hugh has it dialed in. I give him a ton of credit for that. He's been very successful.
They need more bake sales.
Yeah,
Come on, man.
yeah. But and the interesting thing is the funds that they receive can be used for the transmission, treatment, and disposal. So conceivably, we may be able to, through the grant funds that they obtain, be able to help fund even the acquisition of the property for spray area. So, you know, some really, really exciting things there, and could really help the school because they have a substantial ongoing O&M expenditure with wastewater treatment, and it's not something that they want to continue and would very much like to do this, and it could certainly help us as well. Also, just lastly, I want to note it's a very, very important issue and something that we're going to come back to the board. Plan to have an item at the next board meeting about the water quality control plan update for the Bay Delta, and you know, all the news, everything that you know has been out there about the update to the supplemental environmental document for Phase 1, the South of Delta and the San Joaquin River tributaries. They've also, so that was recently released. They also released the framework for Phase 2, which are the other tributaries north of that flow to the Delta. And I guess we're we're in the unique position of being affected by both because we have the Stanislaus in Phase 1 and the McCollum and Calaveras in Phase 2. There's a lot to be concerned about based on what was submitted in that proposal about unimpaired flow requirements. What would be required to be left in stream between February and June. On the Phase 1, it was a range between 30 and 50% with a target of 40%. required to remain in stream. On phase 2 in the framework document, which is basically the beginning of the environmental review process, it was in the range of 40 to 60% with a 50% target. So these are, the reality is this could turn our systems upside down if we had to. It could make it virtually impossible to operate water systems and to store water in our reservoirs with the requirement that you let that much water pass through. So we have submitted comments, give Peter a lot of credit on this, as well as our Water Law Counsel, Dave Cameron. We submitted comments both individually as an agency and through our coalition of groundwater sustainability agencies in our effort through SIGMA, because one of the fundamental problems is they did not even consider the fact that, requiring this much outflow to pass through the delta would bypass a tremendous opportunity for our recharge efforts and could undermine that dramatically. So that really wasn't even considered. So that was something that we were able to submit comment letters on. We're in the queue on that. The state board is going to start considering that. I believe it's next week at their hearing, or the week to follow. That'll probably be several month process to consider that recommendation by staff. But we think that it's misguided. There are other things that really have to be considered, like the non-flow predation issues, reconnecting the land with the water with the land, some of the ideas on creating more functional wetlands as opposed to the channelized environment. Those kind of things that we have demonstrated even on the McCollum with the success of the fishery there, and the return during the drought. So we're going to come back to the board. I know some of this gets really into the weeds. We'll try not to get too buried in that, but to try to stay at a higher level on why this is critically important to our future, why we submitted comments on this, why we're going to continue to track it. We'll be there watching what's happening at the state board. We'll testify when it's appropriate and stay a part of this. And at the same time, the state has continued to have voluntary settlement negotiations with stakeholders. Continues on the McCollum River, and some of what was released in these documents is at odds with what has been represented by the state in those settlement processes. So that's a real problem, and it could make it impossible for the agencies that want to join in a voluntary settlement as opposed to a regulatory framework that is draconian. May not have that opportunity if this proposal goes through. So. I'll leave it at that, but we will be back to you shortly with an update on that.
Gary, thank you.
I have
Go ahead.
a couple of questions. I was thinking a little bit about that snowshoe proposal and how complicated the use calculation might be. I mean, you said that they're a leaky system. You said at the engineering meeting that they figure that they're losing 50% of their treated water. Mm-hmm. So how do you go about coming up with a new contract with them for the assumed additional flows if we're going to have fire protection and all that kind of stuff? They may actually use less water in the future than they're using now. So how's that work?
Yeah, that's why we have the engineering and financial experts on staff doing that calculation right now, because we've got to make sure.
We have design standards.
Yeah.
That, I'm sure that's what we'll use. We'll use our design
For flow,
standard.
yeah, and that's why, Gary from Weber Geo and Gary Geo and Charles are working directly on this as far as, what are the system requirements to provide them with fire flow, and it's probably going to be in the range of a 6-inch meter. Right now they're at a 2-inch meter, but the reality is their actual water use, I mean, they'll have a larger meter to have it in the event of necessary fire flow, but the ongoing day-to-day consumption numbers may, it may actually come down because of the actual, tightening of the system. They certainly will in time be adding more residents to their community, but that's kind of the irony of the whole thing. But it's definitely a beneficial project, and will help us in our water use efficiency efforts as well.
That's like all Evans Pass, and I'm not sure how many of those 225 families are full-time, because that's what we face up the hill.
Yeah, it's extraordinary risk that they're in, not having hydrants, and I'm sure that in time that becomes a serious challenge with property insurance. So, I give their board, the people we've been meeting with, a ton of credit. They're very, very serious about doing the right thing here, And we've explored a number of different options, including whether it would be a better option to form an assessment district and then to issue bonds. And we don't think so. They want to continue to exist and have a wholesale agreement with us specific to their deliveries and just more capacity. So I think we can make it work, and it's fair to our customers and fair to theirs.
Because it is a very old subdivision, just, everything's antiquated, and so they're coming up with new hydrants, and that's going to be a big ticket item for them.
Okay, thank you. Board reports, information, future agenda items.
You wanna start with
Bertha.
me? Okay, I just wanted to comment that I'm just very pleased to hear of where we've come. If we stop and we think about how many of these subdivisions or agencies have come to CCWD, and we were able to collaborate with them and supply them the water or the technical assistance, and we've done that under Dave's guidance, and I'm just very pleased because we can start with Flying Acres, we can go to Blue Lake Springs, we can go to, all down the hill, and I just am very pleased with the progress that you and the staff have been able to accomplish. I think that's wonderful.
Well, thank you. I feel really lucky. I mean, again, the colleagues I mentioned before who are working on this are just really thinking outside the box, trying to find solutions that, again, bottom line, I mean, we as each, whether it's an HOA or another agency, we each have to be able to represent to our boards that this is fair to all of our customers that are going to have some financial stake in the system that's affected, and that's the bottom line we have to get to. But there are different ways we can get there, and we're finding that we're able to do that. So I'm confident we can do this. We've got some other things. Had a discussion with the county today about pursuing a grant to do the composting facility. This is something Director Thomas brought up for our last 2x2 meeting with the Board of Soups, and we had a follow-up meeting with staff today, and we're gonna keep working on it. And I think there's a pathway for us to go after grants so that our sludge, instead of us having to haul it all the way across the valley into the Bay Area to pay to have it disposed of, that we could actually do composting here, and the county can do composting as well for all the green material that comes off with all the dead trees and all of the necessary home protection with clearing around homes, to have a place to be able to convert that into a soil amendment that would actually be valuable to the community and generate some revenue. So
Yes, I know that's been an issue that's come up, and, we've discussed it over the years, and then it dies down, and then it comes, now we're talking about it again, but that's, extremely positive.
yeah, and
I think.
the 2x2 is extremely helpful in this, and we've got that as our next point to come back later this month, and then we plan to have a workshop with stakeholders, other wastewater agencies in the community, and our septic haulers as well, to talk about to do some visioning on this, and to really make a determination. Do we want to move forward and try to prepare a grant application and try to make this happen? So it's pretty exciting to have that in the future.
I just have one more,
And I do agree with you on your first point, Bertha, that we are working well with others, our neighboring utilities, counties, subdivisions, whatever. And that is a great thing to see with CCWD doing that. And our staff is very helpful in that process.
I just had one more item. I'm not sure how many people know John Daniel Leary from up the hill. He served on the Evans Pass Fire District Board for 24 years. He passed away. And I don't know how many people know how big the fire department itself is up in Evans Pass or up in Arnold. That place was packed with people. The memorial service lasted just a little over an hour. Then they went out to the Moose and had the celebration of life, and I just want to pass that on. Dave has worked with him, and I'm not sure, as I say, how many of the other board members knew about Dan. He worked in Stockton. He was the fire chief over in McCollum Hill. So you fellas might have.
Yeah,
That was real.
he'll be dearly missed. He was a great to work with he was, on the other side of the table with the Moose Lodge as we negotiated the long-term lease agreement. And also as we made our way through all of the challenges with the temporary bridge last year and working directly with him, he was phenomenal. So greatly missed.
Okay, thank you, Bertha. Russ?
Okay, how much time do I have?
It's almost over.
30 seconds?
3 minutes.
3 minutes, where is that in the policy?
Better start.
Better start. Okay, I was about 30 seconds late today because it takes sometimes more than an hour to drive from Stockton to the groundwater recharge meeting there to here. So I have made every effort to be here on time, but I was not quite today. Okay. I attended what I thought was a very uplifting, groundbreaking ceremony in Copperopolis the other day, the subdivision of La Cobra Mina. It's a 42-lot phase 2 of what at one time a couple of years ago might have been considered a failed subdivision that a couple of young men, one of which came to here, if you remember when Mike Lemke came to talk to us about the fire flows, or requesting a change from 5/8 to 1-inch meters. But anyway, Mike and his brother took over this bankrupt subdivision and sort of threw their life savings and a lot of effort into getting it rejuvenated, and they had a nice ceremony out there today. It was on last Friday. It was very well attended, and I think that it may be a sort of a watershed moment for the building industry in Copperopolis coming back. I mean, there's a number of houses that are under construction, but they're owner-built or on single-family lots in Copper Cove subdivision. But this is well, it was really very enjoyable for me to see that. Now, I have been wondering for some time now, as I attend these meetings at the East San Joaquin groundwater recharge effort, about how there's this seemingly a big collision course that's we're all on with the state water board's proposed requirements on the flows. And finally, somebody brought that up today, and it opened up really a kind of a lot of discussion from various people about their concerns. One young man who is a general manager of an agency down there, he talked about the fact that his agency has always had, not always, but frequently has excess water that they don't need to distribute to their customers. But when that happens, they have the ability to sell it to other nearby consumers, and it's a source of income for them. But he can see where with these unrestricted flows requirements, that they won't have a drop of water that they can sell. I mean, zero. And he feels very threatened by that, and their budgets will be threatened by that. Others, Chuck Wynn, the fellow who is the Supervisor Wynn, who's the chairman of this whole effort down there, was making some comments that I thought were pretty interesting. That it in this state, it's not a problem of water availability. It's the proper management of that water that is the problem. So he was just saying that with all the agencies, including ours, Aqua, Southern California agencies, all just shouting loudly that this program and then the percentage of the water flows that they're wanting to use to flush the salmon out to the sea, it's unjustifiable, it's unsustainable, it's just really unacceptable. But he also said he thinks that it's a done deal, that Governor Jerry Brown just really feels like that's his, he wants to, this is another one of his legacy programs. But I for one, I wouldn't want to have it on my historical legacy that you're causing economic chaos, or potentially economic chaos in the state by trying to push for these things. So, anyway, I have been waiting for somebody to bring that up. I don't feel like that I personally have the depth of knowledge of the subject to bring it up myself, but I was very glad that other people there today finally did. So, I kind of got the impression that it is gonna become law, but it'll immediately be challenged in litigation. So if there's any light at the end of the tunnel, it may come in the form of an adjudicated decision. So that's all I have. That's enough.
Thank you, Russ.
3 minutes and 30 seconds.
You made it good.
I'll use less.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment also in regards to that. You know, when we had a tour a few weeks back with the Assistant Secretary of the Interior, and then soon after he met with Secretary of the Interior Zenke, and they came out with a what I thought was a very positive statement. But in the article that I read, I was troubled to read that an individual supervisor thought it was within his ability to write a letter speaking for everybody in the foothills or everybody in the jurisdiction. And I don't think that that's a proper thing to do. I think that this district needs to take the lead on a response to our position and then share it with the Board of Supervisors and try to get them to agendize it and vote and then be able to send a letter from the Board of Supervisors as opposed to one individual saying that they speak for everybody. Even though I agreed with much of what was in the letter, it's just not the proper way to do it. And there's really no authority behind it. But if we do it in the right way, which is for us to write a recommendation, ask for the support of the supervisors, to do a joint recommendation on this bill, I think that's the proper way to do it. This is not the first time that's happened, and I don't really know how or if we should, but it is troubling to me that we have individuals that will take it upon themselves to use county letterhead without any authority of their board to do so. And I hope everybody here knows that it's not appropriate to send a letter from CCWD on behalf of CCWD. You know, you want to send a letter, everyone has freedom of speech, but you know, we act as a board, and we should act as a county unified, and you know, this nonsense grandstanding stuff I think needs to stop. So
I think you ought to give that exact same speech to the Board of Supervisors.
I'd be happy to.
And I would support you and I'd be there. I agree.
I think
with
there's
what you
other
say.
methods that we should go through, but I mean, it's
He
just
needs to be
frustrating.
held accountable in front of his own peers. That's the bottom line. You're exactly right. You know, I can't put something on CCWD letterhead. Well, I could and send it out to the President of the United States and claim that the federal government owns water. None of us own water. It's a public resource. We have the right to use it. But he twice in that statement, the federal government owns the water. No, they don't. No one owns water.
I think it just made the county look foolish. So,
I mean, I guess that's why there was a big recall or something not too long ago. Anyway,
Not really.
my comment to you is that I feel like that would be a great presentation to give to their board, as well as, I don't know if he sits on, I assume he does, this joint CCWD county group that you guys meet every so often. Does
No,
he
he's
sit on that?
he's not chair or
doesn't?
co-chair. Dave, you want to speak?
Yeah, Mr. President, I don't want to run too far afield on this because it's certainly not agendized, but I do want to just say that I had planned to put the issue of coordinating our positions, our messages on the agenda for our 2x2 with the Board of Supes, because this is exactly what we were hoping to do, at least on the federal side, by us jointly using MIA for our advocacy, and then having, as soon as the county's ready for us to have a joint planning session so that we can develop common, our common messaging and our priorities and things, so that when we're, going back and walking the halls of Congress, or, submitting correspondence, testifying, whatever it is that we're doing it with ideally we're doing it with the largest coalition locally possible, with the most effective, influential voice that we have. And so that will be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Jeff, anything further?
no, but I mean, if we were to do something about that, I think it would be better if it was a letter from the general manager with our authorization as a board, as a whole. So I don't know when and if that's gonna become necessary, but if it is, then,
Director Davidson, I would really rather just take this to our 2x2 and try to work that out through that group. I think we've got the right forum to be able to do it there.
okay.
Terry, anything on your?
I probably shouldn't say what I want to say. It tears off that. It also tears off some comments that were made a little bit earlier. All I can say is that this whole issue of surface water flows, the condition of the delta that's continued to deteriorate over time, that it has been proven time and time again in civilizations that when you lose your environment, you lose everything. Civilizations that focus and live in and around that environment. And that may seem like a pie in the sky statement, but you know, look at many things that are going on in China right now with their gross development of the environment, their water resources, and the pollution that's been created. So it's definitely, in my opinion, this whole river flow issues is one of water management, timely and efficient management. But at the same time, this idea of all that water is for salmon is a crock. That water is for environmental enhancement of the delta to hold salinity back and so many other aspects of it. So I would encourage folks to not say that a drop of additional water going down the river is for salmon. Salmon is one part of the ecosystem that will benefit from that water. And that's been proven time and time again. And so as our leadership in the nation changes from political party to political party, so swings the environmental as well as social and many other aspects of the latest solutions to our nation's issues. And so without really going into any more detail, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to become better educated and understand you know, all of the issues that go on. I certainly understand our district's need for water, okay, and we're blessed in having probably, you know, much more, at least water rights and access to a lot more water than we use. Unfortunately, we can't continue using that in other locations at this time in transfers, but hopefully at some point we can, including groundwater recharge. But at the same time, our salmon numbers continue to deteriorate with whatever flows we've been giving them, which is just you know, it's I don't know. I mean, historically, our environment's receiving less and less runoff. You combine that now with climate change, global warming, that a lot of these same people that are talking about all this water for the salmon wanted to ignore that climate change and global warming was even happening 20 years ago. I don't think there's any question that global warming is happening. And if you don't support that, then or understand that's the case, then I think you really need to understand that you're one person in a whole world, and we need to live in and among or with each other. But the problem is now you look at how our droughts and our floods and those issues are going to become more prevalent in this climate change environment that we're in. And yeah, I don't have the answer. It's going to take a lot of people working together, kind of like our wild and scenic river that we got here, to really come up with a solution that benefits everybody. But I can tell you one thing, having spent 4 days in Seattle in 90-degree weather, it's like, holy smokes, what is going on with our climate, you know, in the North Coast? I mean, that was... And you talk about people, oh man, you haven't seen traffic until you go up there. The Bay Area seems, anyway. So, you know, it's this whole issue of the river. Yeah, 40% is unheard of. And I'm sure the settle, you know, you always ask for more, right, going into negotiations. And I'm sure it'll be less. But the point being is that our rivers are in a world of hurt. And we need to figure out a way to support the ecosystem that the salmon are part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, I got a few things, couple quick ones. I did want to say that our 2x2 meeting with our county supervisors has been very beneficial, and it is made up of their chair, Gary Toffanelli, and Jack Garamendi as coach, as assistant. Joining in the mix, Tim Lutz, their CAO, and then now Brian Moss is also part of the meetings. They recently signed on with MIA as their advocate in Washington DC, and I think that going forward, our meetings will become more and more fruitful. We do have some great subjects and a great intercourse in each meeting. We have a camera meeting next week on Wednesday the 15th, and just a quick note that CCWD, the water district that provides water to San Andreas, McCallamy Hill, and what's the little town? Paloma, is having a rate hearing, a significant rate increase. Their hearing has just been moved. It's next Tuesday, the 14th, at 7 p.m. It's just been moved from their office to the San Andreas Town Hall. I think they're expecting a crowd to get significant ideas of a significant increase in water rates.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Next,
Is that meeting gonna be the end of the 218 period?
yes, yeah. We received our, in San Andreas, we did receive our 218 notices quite a
This
while
one will
ago.
be,
This will be the rate hearing,
if the 218.
Right,
Yeah, they'll sort of count them and.
right. Okay, our next board meetings are here in this room, August 22nd at 1 p.m., and then September 12th at 1 p.m. And we're going to go into closed session for three items, conference with legal counsel and existing litigation with law contender and CCWD. We've got item 9B, conference with legal counsel, potential litigation, and then conference with labor negotiation management confidential unit. And we'll be back for any reported items in closed session. Thank you.